So I'm Marianne Pelletier, and we are the StopL Analytics Group. Greg?
I'm Greg Duke. I am the database partner for stewardship Analytics, and I mainly help out organizations with their database needs,
Including what we're going to show you today. And Ruthie, do you want to introduce yourself as a Stoppelian, or are you Westfield State today? Okay.
Both, but Ruthie Giles, I am the associate for prospect development for StopL, and my happy place and the thing I'm really good at is prospect management systems.
Great.
Yeah.
And as people come in, let's introduce StopL for a couple minutes, Greg, if you don't mind. I'll just do a couple introductory comments because people are still dropping in. So the StopL Analytics Group is an all about data firm. Whatever it is that's going on with data, if it's tangled up, we want to help. If it's not moving fast enough, we want to help. And if it doesn't tell you anything, we want to help. Our services involve fixing, innovating, and teaching. So we also want to help teach you how to help yourself. So our water cooler chats were started when the pandemic started, when we felt bad for everybody who suddenly had to work from home like we had been for a couple of years already. And it became popular enough that people kept bugging us. When we shut it down, people kept bugging us to bring it back. So we did. And so now it's once a month, so we can focus on our clients during the rest of the month. Today, Greg is going to talk about automating a lot of your stewardship steps to make sure that your clients are served, but also that you don't spend all day in administrivia. Your job is to be creative. It's not to repeat, right? So, Greg, I'll go to mute now. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for attending. This is actually something that I'm working on with a couple clients now. The concept of automating a lot of these processes. What I'm finding more and more with my clients is that they want to have as much, as Marianne said, as much of this process automated so they can get on with the other things. And I have to say, even 5 years ago, I think a lot of this was kind of a dream of a lot of, I would call it almost a dream of a lot of advanced services directors, that they would say things to me like, hey, can we get all of this done just by not even pressing a button, just by setting up a process, and then we don't have to think about it anymore. One organization I worked for actually did some of this through SQL programming, but most organizations don't have that kind of person on board who can program in SQL and set these things up. Fortunately, some database programs have started to automate services or provide automation services. And a lot of this is fairly kind of new and not completely built out. I think there are opportunities for database companies to do more along these lines. Now, the one thing I do want to mention before I begin this is normally I like to have a completely database neutral session like this, that I want to talk about how you can do a process in multiple database CRMs. The reason is simply everyone, a lot of people are on different CRMs. They are, all working towards the same process, but the steps might be different. Unfortunately, the only CRM I have access to right now is Razor's Edge and Razor's Edge NXT. And so by force, this is going to have to be a Razor's Edge heavy presentation. But in my understanding, there are other CRMs that are starting to build these kinds of processes. So I'm going to try to make this as applicable to other databases as I can. For example, if any of you use Tessitura, I mentioned the SQL programming. Well, of course, Tessitura builds all of its queries and exports around SQL. So you can use some of that SQL programming to build automated reports. And unfortunately, I don't have access to Tessitura. Otherwise, I demonstrate how to do that there as well. But hopefully for this one, you can take away some of the ideas that I'm putting into Razor's Edge. So let me start off by sharing, and what I should also say before I begin is I'm going to show you two different processes in Razor's Edge. One is through database view, and the other is through WebView or NXT. And the reason is because I think even if you don't have Razor's Edge, you can kind of pull some ideas from either database, simply because one of them will show you how to do automatic emails, and the other one will show you how to pull lists so that if you have a different email server, you can use that. So let me start by sharing my screen for database view. And really, to me, automation in databases is all about identifying the right query, the right segment that you want to be contacting, or that you might want to be passing on to your development officers for stewardship. So last night, one of the things about our water cooler sessions often is that we'll come up with an idea, and it's a great idea. We have very little time to do it. I actually like having little time to set something up because, especially in this case, setting these things up is actually pretty quick. And if I can do it quickly offline, I can do it quickly online when I'm here in front of all of you. So in database view, well, let me start off by saying what I'm trying to do here in query. Stewardship, of course, is all about thanking our donors. And one of the things we want to do with regards to stewardship is getting back to our donors as quickly as possible. If we can identify when someone has made a gift, the day or maybe the day after someone has made a gift, and get back to them as soon as possible, we're meeting their needs, and we're getting back to them while they're still thinking about our organization. So in thinking about that, I thought about how to set up queries that would allow us to identify when someone has made a gift and if they've made a gift in the very recent past. And one of the things that Razor's Edge query does allow us to do, and let me make sure the screen is being shared. Oops. Get it right? Okay. One of the things that Razor's Edge queries allows us to do is to set a date for giving that's not a what we call a static date. Instead, it's a dynamic date. So if we want to find out who made a gift yesterday, we could actually set the operator to equals and the date and a date of yesterday. Now, in Razor's Edge queries, we can set a number of these dates. We can set, for example, a specific static date. We could do last week's gifts. We could do last month's gifts. And you may be looking at this thinking, what on earth would we need this week or last week? Well, obviously, we might want to know this week's gifts, but what about next week's gifts? What purpose is that for? Really, the next week is another kind of stewardship that I do want to touch on briefly, and that is you can use this same idea to identify, for example, whose alumni membership. Okay, Marianne, so in case there are a few gifts that come in, we process once a week. Yeah, I wanted to demonstrate, yesterday and last week. In fact, I've got a couple other queries.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was participating.
Oh, that's okay. So, for example, let's try and share this one. If we have we can make the gift date as last week. We can also put in certain criteria. So let's make sure everyone's seeing this one. So can everyone see the criteria to the left of the screen? I never know sometimes with Zoom whether we're seeing this screen or not. Okay, so we can add some criteria to this. Let's say we want to know if we've received gifts to a certain fund. We can then go down to the funds and add the certain fund ID. Or we can say we just want to know gifts that were made last week that are $500 or more. And in this case, we just go to gift amount, do greater than or equal to 500. So what we have here essentially is a list of queries, in this case, that have just some very basic criteria. We're just looking for, a few types of people who have made gifts recently. So I've got here, we've got some last week's gifts. I put together last month's gifts over 5,000. And in this case, what I'm thinking is I've worked at a lot of organizations where if a gift was above a certain amount, we would have the president of our organization send a personal thank you letter to them. And this is a good way to make sure we've automated that process so that we have all of last month's gifts over, in this case, $5,000. By the way, this is a dummy database, so all of the gifts were just random gifts I put in last night of really random amounts. So don't get jealous of this organization. It had 174 gifts of over $5,000 last month. I was just trying to come up with something random. So in the past, we would have these queries in our system, and they were great in that we could just click a button and run them whenever we wanted to have them. And in fact, I put together an export that exports all of these, and we can just click the button and let that run. But as I say, a lot of organizations are looking for something a bit more automated now, that they don't want to have to go in every week or every day or every month and click this button. I once worked for an organization whose the database person left suddenly, and one of the things that this database person did was to run these reports on a regular basis. Well, the first thing that the client said to me was, we need someone to go in there and press that button, because I guess nobody else ever pressed the button. I don't think she ever took any vacation time, I guess. So having set these up, as I say, we could go in and press the button. All I've got in this export is simply, this one's tied to last week's gifts, and it's just got some information that we would need if we wanted to create a mail merge or we wanted to create an email. For those of you unfamiliar with Razor's Edge, emails are counted under a phone number in database view, something I've always been amused by in the 20-some years I've worked with Razor's Edge. And for a long time, this was pretty good. You know, we'd run this report on a regular basis. We'd do our mail merge. As many of you know, who run Razor's Edge, there's also a mail module in Razor's Edge that takes these exports or these queries, and you can create a mail merge. But as a lot of you also know who use Razor's Edge, all of that got messed up when Razor's Edge changed the security settings, and a lot of the old mail merges don't work anymore. So fortunately, there are now things you can do in Razor's Edge that will allow you to go around this mail merge and send out mail or email automatically using a different system. The first thing I'm going to show you is especially good if you have a third-party mailing house or a third-party emailing system where you need to send the physical address or the email address to that organization, and then they'll take care of the rest for you. So if you want to automate this process of sending this directly to your email or mailing house, Database View now has a way to do that. And that actually is hidden in admin in a segment that I didn't use for a long time. And when I started using it recently, I was like, where has this thing been all of my life? And that is REQ. So REQ essentially is a report, query, or export scheduler in Razor's Edge. It allows you to set up on your schedule when you want to send out reports or exports or queries to really whatever system you want to, whether it's your own server, your own computer, as I'll show you in a bit, or even someone else's email address. If you want to send an email with an export or report attachment, say to your mailing house on a regular basis, you can do that using REQ. And so let me show you how this works. And so let me open up our last week's gifts, and I'm going to share that screen. Okay, just make sure I've got it here. Okay. So in our last week's gift queue, what we've got is a module for each of these exports. And each of these exports, we can tell the queue to send to a specific place. In this case, with last week's gifts, I've asked queue to send it to, this essentially is my hard drive and the documents folder under this document name. And I can change it using these three buttons, which bring up the file explorer, as with any other three-dot system you see in database view. And I've done the same thing with last week's gifts, in this case over 1,000. So I'm sending this one to a file called last week 1,000 XLS. I can add any other item simply by, and I hope this one's showing up too, just by clicking on add item, choosing export. In this case, it's a gift query, and then it pulls up all the gift queries, the gift exports I've got, and under any of my exports. In fact, I can filter by exports by clicking on only show my exports. So once I've done that, then I can also have a control. I can also change the control and exception reports here. I won't be doing that simply because I'll tell Q instead to stop and export if there's any exceptions. So I'll just click on, in this case, last week's email gifts, add it to the queue. And when I've done that, now you can see that we've added last week's email gifts into the queue. I'm going to have a specific data format. I'm just going to call this one email gifts. Okay, and so now Razor's Edge will send this to my hard drive folder, documents/reports under email gifts. I could have this being sent to any other folder or server that I have access to in Razor's Edge. If I wanted to print it off, I could choose a printer. I don't have any set up, so I can't do that. And if you have Outlook tied to your database server, which, as I say, this is a dummy database, so we don't have that set up. You can click on mail to and decide which email address is going to get a copy of this report. So, as I say, you can send this directly to your mailing house. Maybe there's someone internally who does all your emails. You can just send it to them directly. And then you can also choose a subject line for that email, just so they know what's coming in. Now, having decided how we're going to send out each query, yeah, that's absolutely true. We can automate. Well, I'll show you how to automate letters in the next section, but this is just how to send out the export information. We could have an email and set up an email here, but as you'll see. In NXT, we have some more robust mailing options, so I'll demonstrate those when I get to NXT. So here in last week's, as we've decided how we're going to send out these exports, now we need to decide when we're going to send out the exports. And to do that, we need to go to processing. And now we can decide here how frequently we want these this to be pulled from Razor's Edge, or how often we want it to be sent out. We have options for hourly, weekly, monthly, semi-monthly, and you're probably thinking right now, why isn't there a daily? Well, if we wanted to send out a daily email or daily report, what we want to do is choose weekly, and then we're going to select all of these days. Now, of course, we don't expect to send out any. We might not expect to get any gifts on Sunday. If we don't, we can just unclick Monday, because if we're doing yesterday's gifts, then we don't want to have Sunday or Monday. We just want to have Tuesday through Saturday for yesterday's gifts. But if we're doing this weekly and looking at last week's gifts, then we want to click on Monday, so that on Monday morning we can get all of last week's gifts. In this case, I've set this report to run for 1 a.m. And you may want to make sure that your database isn't updating at that time. I know some organizations have their database update at midnight every day if they're not hosted through Blackbaud. Then down here at the bottom, we can say we want this queue to start out on this, when we want to send it out, we can pick an end date if we're only doing this for a limited time, and then Raises Edge will tell us when the next time this is going to be exported. In this case, it'll be next Monday at 1 a.m. So, any questions about this process?
You mind if I ask a few questions?
Sure, go ahead.
So so you're talking about how we can implement an automation, right? And so this is all great, because what it means is we can automate sending stuff to the mail house. We can also, what I'm sensing from the demonstration that you're showing is that we can figure out how to automate that letters go to the gift officers for their review, and then they push it forward, right? And so that's great, because there's no excuse. I was traveling, I was sleeping, I was having lunch, they can just get those acknowledgments out. Thank you for your $10,000 gift. The other thing that I'm thinking about while you're presenting is, one of the things that we have to think about is, what is the hierarchy of stewardship, right?
Right.
And so one of the other thing you're automating is that if the gift is $1,000 or more, there's an additional letter that gets sent from this salutation. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm going to be demonstrating that in NXT coming up, but you're absolutely right that we might want to have separate queues for gifts, say, not just for any amount, but if they're going to a certain fund. So, for example, if we want our athletics department to have a list of all the gifts made to athletics last week, and we can put together a queue and send it to the athletics development officer. Every Monday he or she gets a list of all the people who have given to athletics. So yeah, there's a lot of different options that you can do. So, that's impressive, Mackenzie, sending out acknowledgments the same day for maybe that's really cool, because for a major gift, I know most organizations I've worked for, you don't just get the acknowledgement from major gifts. You might get something from the president of the organization, maybe you get something from a dean. And this queue is a great way of setting up those processes, because you can set up a queue to send to the president's office a list of all the people who have given a major gift on a certain day or a certain week. And that gives the president's office, the leeway to put together their own letter. I know most president's offices I've worked with, they want their own separate letter, or they want the option for the president to hand write something. So that gives them the opportunity to just get, the person's name, what they gave to, whatever we put in the export will appear when this queue is triggered and sent out. So that's great. You're sending out same day major gift acknowledgements. This queue automation can kind of let you see what comes in every day.
One of the things that I did was, if the vice president signed the letter, I actually sent it to the vice president's printer. So I didn't have to walk across campus and say, "Can you sign these?" It just showed up. They had the letterhead in tray 2, and we were networked printers, so we got to ship them out. That's what I would do for a president.
Yeah,
of course, in larger shops, we just had a signature machine. Sorry, Greg.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've worked anywhere that had a signature machine yet.
Yeah, I've worked in bigger places than you. Yeah.
Well, I maybe worked in places that got more gifts, I think.
But yeah, what you're talking
my
about.
My arm's getting tired from sending out all of these major gift acknowledgements. Yeah.
But you're setting up the nuts and bolts of the rules. While I'm processing the gift, like when I'm in eTapestry, while I'm processing the gift, I have to think of which letters go to this person. I don't know if eTapestry would allow me to set up a rule that says if the gift is to athletics, automatically add an athletics letter to this. Yeah, and I don't know in the other systems that we've worked on. I don't know that we have that.
Well, I'll show you now how to do that in NXT. And first, before I do that, I'm going to first show you something you need to set up. One of the things I've learned about NXT is that it likes to have static queries instead of dynamic queries. Usually I set up queries dynamic just by default, but recently I've been learning, I need to set up static queries instead. So I'm going to go back to our query screen quickly here. And I've set up one static query, and this query looks different from the other ones in that the other ones were gift queries. This one I've had to set up as a constituent query, and you'll see why when we get to NXT. And what I have to say here is the last gift date equals last week, and the last gift amount is greater than or equal to $1,000. So this is still pulling in everybody who made a gift of $1,000 or more last week. But in this case, we've had to create it as a static constituent query, and you'll see why when we get over to NXT. So I'm going to close off database view and go over to what they now call web view. So what NXT has added in that is the equivalent of REQ in database view is called workflows. And workflows actually give you a lot more depth and flexibility than REQ. If REQ is kind of like, I'm going to tell you who made a gift, and I'm going to let you inform anybody who needs to know who made that gift. Workflow takes that one step further and says, we're going to automatically send out an email or a letter or whatever directly to the donor, and you don't have to do anything. So workflow is under the tools bar, and I'm going to click on workflow designer here. So what we see here are active workflows and the draft workflows, and essentially these are ready to go. I just need to do what's called publishing them. So let me show you an example of what this looks like. So first we start off with our constituent criteria, and we can build this in somewhat a similar way as we do with the REQ queries. In this case, I've asked this event to be triggered when a constituent makes a gift, any gift greater than a penny, any fund, and it's not like a pledge payment or something. So essentially, this is a email thank you for any gift that comes in now. And I called the email name yesterday's gift, but this is actually an automatic. Once someone makes a gift and it goes into Razor's Edge, this workflow is triggered automatically. So I think it's maybe like every 30 minutes or something like that, but you don't have to do anything. This will automatically trigger and go to the next part of the workflow, which is to send out an email. And in this case, I've just set up a basic kind of dummy email saying thank you for your gift. It's pretty easy to set up these emails. I'm not a designer by any stretch of the imagination, but I was able to create an email. You can do it from either a blank layout like this, or you can do it from a template. And the templates give you, some pretty good ways. You can even set up your own template um, using their tools. I won't go into depth into this email just because it's pretty straightforward. And once you've set up an email, then you can plug it into your next step for email. And as a lot of you know in Razor's Edge, one of the frustrating things you have to do often in Razor's Edge is to upload action types. When an email has been sent out, or someone sends out a letter, a whole bunch of letters, then you have to create an import file and import all of the actions into Razor's Edge. And you usually have to do it at night because it takes so long for the import to run. But in workflow, you can automate that process. So in this case, I've clicked on the plus sign. You can add an email, an action, or a condition. In this case, I've picked action. And what is going to happen is that every person who has, in this case, has an active fundraiser will get an action attached to their record. I've called it significant contact in this case. I better call it stewardship, and it'll just say stewardship email was sent out. We sent this. This is the automated contact list. And save and close. Now, every time someone makes a gift under this workflow, then they will get an email thanking them for the gift in whatever template we've set up, and that person will get an action in their record saying that the email has been sent out. So, and I should mention that they get an email whether or not they have a constituent. It's just that if they have an active constituent, then we assign it to that first active fundraiser. So this is pretty neat because we can change this workflow if we want. If we can change the constituent criteria to, and to gifts that we got last week, for example, or gifts to a certain fund or a certain cause, then we can change the email based on that to, we can also have a workflow. What we can do is create another action and do, say, a task, and we can create a proposal in this case and assign it to, say, a select fundraiser who's, hey, thanks for coming, Dom. Search for a fundraiser and send out the action in the future, or send out an action that has to be followed up on. Now, there's a kind of a limited list of constituent criteria in Razor's Edge NXT, but we can do, we can set up an example from a static static list. So in order to do that, we first need to go over to lists and pick constituents, and we need to create a static list. And in this case, the reason I showed you how to set up a static query is I can create a new static list, or a new list based on this static query. And every time every time this query updates, we can we can do the record. Yeah, no prospects have been harmed unless you care about Robert C. Hernandez, who's the person who always gets mentioned in Razor's Edge. So when we set up this list, and we can, this list will update on a regular basis. I think this is a list that also updates every 30 minutes. So it reruns the static query every 30 minutes. And we'll get, everybody who made a gift last week. So I go back to Workflow Designer. And so we can then set up a stewardship from the static list. Gave us $1,000 last week. Send out that email, and we can also add a condition in this case. Whoops, I don't know why it likes doing that. So 8 hours, maybe we'll wait a few hours, and then we can set an action task stewardship so that this gets put on to call a major donor. We've put this down as high priority, and once again we can assign it to the first active fundraiser in case we've got our a fundraiser for this prospect. If not, then we can see in the lists that we were sent through by REQ, we can see, oh, here's someone who doesn't have a solicitor. We better assign a solicitor to this person who just gave us a major gift. And then, then we can, run everything the way we did for this example. Are there any questions about workflow? I know I've gone through this pretty quickly, but it is a pretty straightforward process. All I need to do, okay, so thanks, Christopher. So Jody asked, what if we don't have an email for someone? Well, that's a good question, because in this case, it just won't send an email. That's the reason I like to set this up alongside REQ and not just instead of REQ, because then we can see in REQ, we can have one of the export fields be the email, and we can look through our list of people who made a gift either yesterday or last week or whatever the timeline is, and we can see if we don't have an email for someone. In this case,
sorry, Greg.
Oh,
can we add a condition that says if the email field is null, then redirect it to a letter?
Unfortunately, I don't think that's this granular. Unfortunately, right now there's only one condition is wait, which isn't the most useful condition, I have to admit.
Okay.
But in this case, it'll just not send the email because it just doesn't have an address to send to.
So
now,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the email, if you send out an email blast in, I can't remember where it is, and we might have it set up here. If you send an email blast, it'll tell you these constituents didn't have email addresses, and it'll also tell you, if I remember correctly, these emails bounced. But for this automated process, like I say, if there's no email address, it just doesn't go through, and that's why. Have you investigated the Microsoft Power program that integrates with RE and other CRMs? No, I haven't, but I know someone who has, and that was my co-presenter at the New Orleans Advanced Services conference, Nadine Francis. I'm going to be working in this as soon as I can, because she had some pretty neat ideas with Power Automate. Of course, that's probably something for a completely different presentation, because there's so much more involved with that Power Platform. And I mean, you can tie that into Power BI, you can tie that into, you can just do, so as you say, there's so much more flexibility, but it's it's also its own programming language to do. So what Razor's Edge has here, it's it's easy to use. There's, as I say, there's not as much flexibility, but for an organization that's either starting out with automation or they want a very simple process, this I think is a very good process. But as you say, Ruben, yeah, the Power Platform is pretty neat.
Is that the product that Wilfred has been studying? Our associate Wilfred?
I think, I don't know. Do you know, Ruben?
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're selling. I know the Power
No,
Platform.
Wilfred Bailey, our associate for programming. He was talking about Microsoft Power something.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe we should have maybe we should have him do the next presentation on this. Yeah, because yeah, I know he has been working in that. Yes.
So Greg, one of the things that I'm seeing is you're actually building, a workflow. You're actually building like the thing that programmers drive people crazy with the triangles and the squares and the arrows that go everywhere. But isn't that something that we have to think about when we build a stewardship plan? Because when you get into the committee meeting, people go, well, we should have sent a letter from the library for that, and so it's not in the workflow, and so it's not programmed in. So it feels like, I was at a workshop yesterday for annual giving, and the presenter said, deal with it. Just take a week and plan your annual giving program for the rest of the year. Don't run around like a squirrel all year. Just lose a week. And this is part of me thinks, okay, let's lose a day or 2 days to talk about stewardship and all the pieces of stewardship. Who calls, who writes, who has to approve, who sends little notes, and that sort of thing. Yeah, Ruben is saying the challenge is thinking of good use cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and a lot of this, you're absolutely right, both of you, Ruben and Marianne, that this is a very simple process. I haven't put too many criteria down, but I'm sure every organization can brainstorm and say, hey, instead of the constituent criteria being any fund, let's choose a library. And then we can create an email that has, a library-centric focus, and that's the email that donors to the library get. In the email, you can add mail merge fields, so you can say, dear, title, last name, thank you for your gift of X amount on Y date to the library. So you can make sure that you have personalized this process. And I think you're right. That's, thinking about how you're going to set up this process also involves, like, okay, when do we trigger an email in this case? And what kind of email do we trigger?
So do you mind if I spend 5 minutes showing how to do some of this stuff in Microsoft Word, or would anybody be interested in that?
Sure.
Would anybody on the call be interested in how to make up for some of this stuff if you don't have capacity? Make it work in Word?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So let's say that let's say that you don't have Razor's Edge. You've got something much simpler. One of the things that you can do, I've set up a mail merge here. So in Microsoft Word, and Razor's Edge doesn't use it anymore, but I'm a small enough organization that I need to use it. I have an Excel sheet. I've gone ahead and selected my recipients. I have. Okay, and I've done a mail merge. So this is dear prospect name. That's easy enough to put a merge field in, right? So I just say right here, do prospect name. But this piece, thank you for your gift. This is where we can change according to the gift size. And so this is where I would say rules, if then. Okay, and let's say if this is just like you were saying, Greg, if the field of a gift amount is greater than or equal to, and you used example of 1,000,
Mhm.
then you say generous.
Mhm.
Otherwise, leave a null.
Mhm.
And notice I have to tinker with the I have to tinker with the spaces, right? So it looked like I did generous space, but I didn't. So I need to check where I'm doing my spaces. And then in here, I would say insert the merge field of gift amount. Whoops. I did that wrong. I must have said gift year. Unless my data is wrong. Or my gift amount is not formatted, which means I have to format the field, which I can do.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And here in field codes, this is where I would type in my field codes, my $sign and my business like that. And it's something you can look it up to figure out how to do that. I don't want to waste everybody's time doing that. And then the fund, right? So well, let's just use campaign here. Right, and the other thing we can say is sincerely, and this is where we say, give me a rule. If the campaign is equal to the theater, insert this text, and the text would be the signature. Right, otherwise insert this text. Right, and then this works, right? So if we say thank you for your gift to the theater, oh, it didn't work. So of course I have to set it up so that it doesn't work.
Sometimes.
What is my rule?
Murphy's Law.
If the campaign.
I think the campaign is new theater.
Oh, thank you. Theater. Insert this text. See, and this is where the my CrossFit coach says embrace the suck. Because we have to test, we have to plan, which means we have to argue, then we have to test. And while everybody around says, why didn't you just, isn't that done yet? Okay. Oh, my rule. Can I edit my rule?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and now you're watching me learn how to do this, but the concept is it works. I haven't done this in a few years. I'm getting tired of doing this. Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, so it's giving me a hard time. And then I have the opportunity to pass the records around. Right, and it says I've got a problem with this. So I have work to do on making that theater thing work. I'd have to look that up. Sorry, I didn't prep as well as you did, Greg. Oh, and see, the rule doesn't work.
I was actually having fun last night learning how to, do the workflows, because it's like I say, it's something my clients are starting to ask for.
Yeah. Yeah, because the concept is that's always the concept, right? It's like if we can set up the workflow in NXT, then you don't have to have some administrative assistant on Sunday going, what is this workflow supposed to be? But also the workflow gets taken care of by a machine. That's what we invented machines for, you know? So yeah, and so you can see that the setup work can be a bear, as I just demonstrated in my overly enthusiastic, unprepared way. But once you have it set up and it's working, all you're doing is looking for exceptions, but also now you have the time to pass those letters around to the gift officers to add their notes, right? You send it to their printers, right? You could even say part of the workflow is it gets sent to their printer if you have that technology.
And I also have to think this is the REQ and not so much the NXT workflows because they're limited right now, but the REQ workflows, you can think outside of the box for them because yes, you could use them for stewardship, but I have a client right now who wants to know who has changed a record and when. And so I'm essentially automating this process by creating a query that tells essentially REQ, here is the list of records that have been changed on a certain day. And if I set up a number of exports that, okay, well, here's where the bio one tab or general biographical information got changed. Here's where a gift was added. Here's where an action was added.
Yeah.
And so you can use this for auditing. You can use it for a lot of different features, not just stewardship or gifts. It's kind of a like I say, it's kind of think outside the box.
And the other piece about the stewardship, though, is that if the gift is a certain size or to a certain fund, you can insert the URL that says, please watch this video showing our appreciation. And then you have some program participant going, I can't thank you enough for, rather than the blank. I mean, I've seen video, please watch this video in response to your gift, but everybody got one. Now, how do we make, and I'm still stuck in, we're moving from patron-based fundraising to community-based fundraising. So I'm still in the entitlement ranking thing, but if we still have to work in that, there's always, and then the video from a trustee, your recent gift, blah, 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 blah. Makes a big difference. Yeah.
Oh, one more thing you can use REQ for that I'm also working with.
He's so excited about REQ.
It's an alumni director who wants to know when alumni memberships are running out. So I can say, who has an end date for their alumni membership of next month. And then he can send out an automatic email. Your membership is running out next month. Do you want to renew? Just come over here to this website and, you'll be able to renew right there. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot
that's
of...
the next month piece.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can use this for.
That's great. I'm sorry I sucked up all of the time in asking all these questions. I didn't give a lot of people time to ask questions, but we can stick around for a couple minutes and I can hush up. Or maybe I'm not sorry.
Yeah, thank you all for attending today. I know it's election day, and if you're like me, you forgot to send in your ballot on time. You have to go now and drop it off. So I'm going to be doing that.
You're in Arizona, where they have these guys with the guns and the camouflage watching you vote.
Yeah, I'm in Tucson, which is not usually the center for that sort of thing. But I was a little nervous about that. Yeah. Anybody
else have any other questions about something else? For Greg, he's a font of wicked nifty things you can do. Don't you think, Susan?
And if you have even if you have an Excel question right now, I'm happy to answer those too.
Well, we just got RE and XT, and this was very helpful. I'm not really involved in the stewardship stuff, but just the part about building queries for anything I want was very helpful.
Yeah, like I say, there's a lot of out of the box, outside the box thinking applications for this process as well. It's not just stewardship.
Right.
Uh,
So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming.